I'll repeat what I just said, just for the benefit of people watching this afterwards. I'm Jesper Hornberg, leading the innovation and scaling work at Aura, and also heading up this innovation challenge that we're here to talk about today. I am based in Sweden right now. Normally I'm not, but right now I am. So that's why I have horrible lighting. I'm sorry for this. This was the best I could do because it's very dark outside and we haven't really rigged the house for this. So I hope you bear with me on that one. I'm going to start off with a brief presentation on Aura and on the challenge. And then I'm going to hand over to Ruben, who will talk about the work Swiss Re is doing with this. This is a challenge that is funded by Swiss Re and DEFRA. So it's a joint effort where Swiss Re has the larger chunk, and we're very pleased to be partnering with Swiss Re on this. I'll start off with sharing a presentation, which I will take you through. During my presentation, feel free to interrupt me at any time and ask questions, and or post them in the chat, and I'll address them. My idea is that I'll do my presentation, then immediately hand over to Ruben, and then we listen to him because his presentation is a lot more exciting and informative than mine. And then at the end, we can take any questions you have on either, if that works. And welcome to everyone who's joining us now. Good to see you. So here we go. I'll just do a test. Good. Everyone sees my screen? Good. Ruben is nodding. He's the only one with the camera on, so I'll take that as a yes. So again, welcome to this webinar where we will talk about the Ocean Resilience Innovation Challenge. I will repeat this a couple of times, but the overall purpose of this particular challenge is to drive more innovation and more capital into that innovation to build ocean and coastal resilience. That's the whole purpose of this. We want to create a marketplace, and by 2030, we want to have driven a lot of capital into this space. It's something that's urgent. It's something that is affecting us all already, and we see that it's going to get worse and worse. By 2025, we'd like to have surfaced 15 novel ideas. This is the second innovation challenge we're running, so we already have 4 in our cohort, and we've already seen a number of really interesting initiatives that we haven't been in a position to support yet, but that we will support, hopefully, moving forward. So what's the context? You guys all know this. If you've seen the invitation to this webinar, you're probably in the know, but just for context's sake, we can see that sea level is an issue, and it will likely become more of an issue. There's a high population density along the coasts, and in other places that will be affected by what happens to the ocean. Insurance costs are going up, and Ruben will talk more about there's this gap between what is insured and what is not insured, which is a really interesting piece of information. But it means that there's a lot of payouts and there's a lot of costs to governments and so on, not to speak of the damage it does to the ocean. We know that insurance is a lot cheaper than to not insure and have to pay afterwards. And we also know that if we don't do anything about that, a lot of people will suffer, including the nature and the marine habitat. We also know, there's a lot of things we know here, but we also know that there's a lot of private financing for adaptation and resilience building that is there. It's just not being channeled to the right places. And that's something we would like to address, start addressing, I should say, by doing this. Some of the current barriers that we've identified to getting more private investment into natural capital, there's a lack of understanding how you do it. How do you how do you build the model? How do you make sure that you can get a return on that investment? There's a limited pipeline, obviously connected to the first point I made, but there's not enough investable projects. Again, that's something we would like to address. Sorry? No? Okay. There is a lot of underlying reasons for this. One is insufficient data and modeling capabilities. So that's something that we would like to see addressed much more. There is also inadequate enabling policies to shift the investment away from unsustainable infrastructure and instead do it right. And in many places, do it right for the first time, not to put them on the path that we've gone down in other more developed economies. We also need to get this going now. There is an urgency to this that we can't ignore. Aura works with a number of different things, but we see that it's connected. So we have practice and innovation, and that's what I'm mostly talking about here today. We want to test stuff on the ground, but we also want to learn from that. So Aura is working a lot with various institutions on science and research to gather more data, to get more data and information into various tools and so on. Someone's I have their mic on. Just maybe if you can mute. Thank you. And finally, we need an enabling policy environment. So we're trying to have a bit of a say and an impact there as well. This challenge, I've said all of this already, but just because it's good practice, I'll repeat myself a little bit. We want to create a marketplace here, or contribute to creating a marketplace where we have lots of good innovations that we can support. We want to identify a number of those in this challenge and in the previous one and in future challenges, so that we gradually can build up this pipeline. We also want to feed that into everyone all the private capital that is out there. They need this pipe. So we want to make that connection. We do this based on this sounds so cliche, but it's based on a proven method that we've deployed in the Global Resilience Partnership, where we have been able to support through mentoring and a number of different development practices with companies and organizations, leading to us dispersing about $36 million into innovative resilience building projects on land and coastal as well. And we want to apply the same methodology for this. We launched this the 15th of November, just as the COP was winding up. And the deadline is the 17th of December. We put it at the 17th of December because we're nice people and we want you all to take Christmas holidays and enjoy them as much as one can during a pandemic, but at least to recover a bit from the crushing workload that many of us have had the last year. We will then screen those and review them in detail during January, and then we will announce winners. Following that, we will have a 3-month period of intense mentoring of the finalists, and that will culminate in a number of activities. We'll have a workshop where we work through, preferably in person, but maybe it's going to be virtual. We will still have to wait and see a little bit. Work through project-related issues, but focus a lot. Maybe sorry if now I hear myself again, sorry. Spending a lot of time on the content. That's what we do during the mentoring period. But during these workshops, we'll spend time on not just the content, that's important, but also on the processes. How do we do this? Not just looking at models and business concepts and ways of doing things, but looking at how do you function in a group? How do groups interact with each other? What's the dynamic of the group? Looking for best practice and highlighting areas where we know that there are usually weaknesses in how groups operate, and maybe not resolve all the issues, but at least put a bit of a torch on, put light on the issues that very often crop up, and help you address those things. A final remark before I hand over to Ruben is that this is an open challenge. It's open to anyone. You don't need to have an organization registered necessarily. It might be that you during the process do register something. You don't have to be a private limited company, but it might be that you during the process decide that that's the way to go forward. And you don't have to have a final, finished, polished idea. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for ideas and concepts with high potential that are likely viable, and then we will work with you. This remains your project and your initiative, but we will work with you to make it even more viable, even more ready and finished to scale. At the end of that, and in parallel, but more at the end, we will work a lot with matchmaking. There will be a bit of funding available, but we will prepare you as much as we can so that you are ready to interact with other partners and potential funders. The core of what we do is to give you as good a chance as possible to succeed in what it is you're doing. And during that journey, your ideas will adjust and change and so on, and you will think about new things and you will grow your network and so on. And we want to be there with you as that happens. If you have any questions, I'm just gonna find, this is a bit of repetition and a bit more detail, which we can come back to. Just want to put that there. If you have any questions, please do email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat box as well. Now with that, no one interrupted me and no one posted any questions, so you're very attentive and good. I appreciate that. And now I'm going to share Ruben's presentation. Just need the technology to work for me.
Jesper, I think we have a hand raised.
Ah, brilliant. Thank you for pointing that out. Please ask, I can't see it right now because of how the screen is laid out, but yes.
Hi. Hello, Jesper.
Yeah, David. Good to see you.
It's me again.
Oh.
I can't get enough of your challenge. But I just have a quick question, and so I've been obviously reviewing the application material, and I just wanted to ask one thing that crossed my mind is that at least when I first read through some of the criteria or I guess the evaluation criteria that you would look at, there was mention about generating some revenues within the project, but then when you're actually filling out the form itself, the table that is a guidance application form, there's really no section which focuses on this potential for generating revenue. So I guess I just was looking for a little bit of clarification. Do you think that's maybe a sort of implied important criteria, or is it something that we really should feel or put a lot of weight on and feel that it's something that we would have lower scoring or points if we don't have revenue generation within the project? So that's one quick question. And I guess the other thing was just the level of funding. You said it's a small amount of funding. I was just wondering if you could be concrete, because at least with my own project, I could be very ambitious and ask for kind of a big scale up, or I could be very moderate and ask for almost nothing. And I just don't want to, I would love to be ambitious, but I also don't want to disqualify myself just because I like thinking big.
Two good questions. Thanks, David. The first question, you say implied. Very often when we review applications, you can it's clear if this is an NGO one-off project, and when it comes to an end, there's nothing, you need to apply for additional funding. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for something that has the potential to generate revenue. So it's not so much the numbers at this stage. We'll get to that. It's more with what is the model? Do we think that that is viable? And based on all the work you have done, I think that would shine through in the, or I mean, it always does shine through in what you submit. So you don't need to show a specific, coming back to what I said before, it doesn't need to be a finished, polished whole business plan with, and I mean, we're not asking for that either at this stage. It just needs to be the model there, and the model does imply whether it's going to have a potential to generate revenue or not. So that's what we're looking for. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Good. The other question, how much? Raising funds, my background has been as an entrepreneur and an investment manager and so on. And raising funds is not something you do once and then you run your business. It's a continuous journey where you, for certain initiatives, you need additional funding, and for scaling up to new geographies or whatever it is that you're scaling up, you also need additional funding. So it's, I think you should be ambitious. That's not gonna look bad in any way that you are. Then how much funding would be available from this challenge fund might not be the whole amount, but it might be something that takes you towards raising that additional capital. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think I'll. That's very helpful. I think I'm going to be ambitious, but I'm also going to I guess within my application, let everyone know that this doesn't have to be this amount. That you could almost do any level of funding, okay, instead of the full amount. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just as an additional comment to that, so I don't know exactly how advanced you are in your model, but from experience, having worked with various initiatives in various sectors, the number always changes and goes up and down. And one of the things that we will challenge you with as a winner is that what you need, really? And look for justification. And it might be that we think that actually you need more, or why don't we do it this way instead? And we're not doing that in a prescriptive way. It's really your project, but we ask and we try to find the best route for you. Okay. Great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No other hands. Federico, I'm going to rely on you to be my second pair of eyes here and keep me in line. If something shows up and I'm not seeing it, please let me know. Thank you. And now, over to Ruben. I'm sharing your... it's sharing, right?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
You just
thank
tell me
you, Jesper.
What to do, and then I'll do it.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk a little bit about Swiss Re, our role in the Innovation Challenge, and how many of you know who is Swiss Re and what we do? Does anyone knows Swiss Re? Okay, I have one hand, two hands. Okay, excellent. So why don't we go to the third slide, please, Jesper? 3 hands. So let me talk a little bit. Next one, please. Let me talk a little bit about Swiss Re and what is our role. So Swiss Re is a global reinsurer We provide all forms of reinsurance and also insurance. We were founded back in 1863, so we have over 157 years of existence. We have business operations across the globe and all lines of business. Our main core business, and when we were founded, is really to provide support to insurance companies. So we are the insurance of the insurance companies. We provide support to the large portfolios of the insurance companies. For example, we provide support and capacity to large portfolios of industrial risks, or corporates, or large portfolios of automobiles, or large portfolios of group life insurance or medical insurance. We are pretty much on infrastructure, construction, engineering, credit and surety business. So we also have direct insurance business in some countries. We have growing also on the direct insurance segment. And we also work to provide risk knowledge solutions to our main clients. We also work with governments, trying to help them understand the risk they bear and how can we collaborate in order to make them more resilient by providing adequate risk transfer solutions. If we go to the next one, please feel free, anyone, to raise your hand or just speak up on the microphone and ask any questions during the presentation. We don't need to wait until the end of the presentation to ask questions. One of the things that we continuously focus on is how can we contribute to decrease or close the protection gap. What's the protection gap? If you look at this slide, protection gap is the difference between the total economic losses from natural catastrophes versus the insured losses. As we can see in this slide, the trend continues to grow. Year after year, we see that the amount of losses derived from hurricanes, earthquakes, and other type of hazards, the losses are much bigger than the insured losses, and someone needs to bear and pay for those losses. And normally, when we see mainly in emerging markets, developing countries, those costs are bared by governments. Why? Because governments have a dual role. In some cases, or most of the cases, governments don't have enough insurance to cover their own assets and their infrastructure, like public roads and bridges, public schools, hospitals, hydraulic infrastructure, urban infrastructure, but they also have to support the low-income population or the vulnerable population, those low-income segments of their countries that without government support, they can simply not get back to normal. Talking about when the low-income population loses their homes due to a flood or an earthquake or a hurricane, or when an agriculture farmer loses their crops due to an event, and they cannot simply get back to normal without government support. So government support bears a lot of the losses by having an impact on their own infrastructure, their assets, but also helping the low-income population to get back to normal. And normally there's a double impact to government exposure. On one hand, they need to cope with the losses. And on the other hand, normally when there's a major disaster happening in a specific region, there is a decrease on the economic activity on the region. So the government is collecting less resources from taxes, tourism taxes, from, the activities are decreasing. So they are collecting much less resources, but they need to invest a lot of money to get back to normal. So this is why insurance is so important, because at those critical moments when these natural catastrophes impact the specific regions, there is when money is needed the most, and the main objective is how can you get back to normal as soon as possible so people can get income and regain the activities and get back to normal. So this is one of the core business that the Swiss Re do, is really trying to help governments understand the risks they bear, the potential to be exposed to a major event, and how can we cope with that and help them to transfer a portion of that risk in order to avoid them collapsing or having to increase taxes or increase their debt and impacting future generations. If you go to the next one, Jasper, please. I would summarize this slide with one simple phrase, which is nature protects, so that's why nature must be protected. So in this case, nature has shown their value, and nature, talking about coral reefs, talking about mangroves, talking about forests, they protect the coastal environment, they protect the economic activities, and that's why it's so important to make sure that nature is protected, and insurance is a good way to make the nature more resilient. As we can see in the statistics here, 15 million people is already protected by mangroves every year. $33 billion is the economic value provided by coral reefs through tourism-related activities. I will give you some examples of a good case of in Mexico of insurance coral reef coverage, and the other statistic is 55% of the global GDP is dependent on biodiversity and economic services. So we want to make sure that nature is healthy, the nature is protected, so the nature can be a natural protection to the economies, to the livelihood of the people in coastal zones, for example. If we go to the next one, please. As mentioned, there's many ways that we can provide protection to the natural assets. These are some examples of how nature can be protected and how it can be enabled. What could be some ideas of what could be applicable to your own projects of the Innovation Challenge. We encourage also the use of insurance in planning and design to scale up projects. The first example is to protect and restore natural assets. So for example, parametric index-based solutions and structures to enable quick recovery. This example of Mexico, the Mesoamerican reef cover, the coral reef in Mexico is the second largest coral reef in the world. And as you may know, the Riviera Maya Cancun area has a significant amount of tourism. This has grown significantly and is the livelihood of many, many people in the state of Quintana Roo. But that area is also very exposed to hurricanes, and hurricane impact, sometimes there is a significant amount of losses. What science has shown to us and some researchers is that the areas of that coastal area that are protected by the reef, normally the impact to that areas by hurricanes is much smaller than the areas that are open without reefs. So what we work together with the Nature Conservancy and the state government and the federal government of Mexico was really, how can we ensure that we protect the reef? And protection is not only by having an insurance coverage, it's really a complete holistic view, a comprehensive view of, for example, avoiding the pollution of the ocean, because if the ocean is being polluted, then the reef will die naturally because it's a live entity. So it's about making sure that we are doing everything in our power to avoid overpollution, that we avoid overexploitation of the natural resources. So we make sure that we are not damaging the reef by using tourism activities like scuba diving, snorkeling, a lot of boats running around and polluting the area, but also making sure that when there is a major event like a hurricane, the storm surge that impacts the reef will protect the coastal economy, but it will have a significant impact. And what we need is really to restore that as soon as possible. So what we created was a parametric coverage, which the beauty of a parametric insurance coverage is that you get a payout when a hurricane surpasses a specific wind speed. You get an immediate payout, and you can use the money to restore the reef immediately. And the money is used, to to ensure that the local brigades that have been trained and manuals and guidelines have been developed, so they know what they need to do. They need to go out to the ocean, collect the broken pieces of coral, bring them back to nursery, because this is a plant, this is a live entity, and if you don't take actions immediately, they will die. And then it will take years for the reef to be grown again. So once they are taken to nursery, they can replant back into the reef, so that continue to have, you know, the size and the roughness needed to protect against future events. So it is the first insurance of a natural asset in the world, and it's a very relevant project. The other one is about enabling the risk in natural infrastructure. For example, what we called green-gray infrastructure, instead of just doing things like doing out of pure concrete and cement, include green infrastructure. And one good example is what was done in the Netherlands, in one of the dams that protects the country against flood, in which instead of doing a full concrete of cement dam, they saw a lot of erosion coming year after year, and they decided that let's put some green, some plants, some trees together with the dam, in order to avoid this type of erosions coming constantly. And when you have nature and you have green environment together with the gray infrastructure, you will see that this will last for much longer, and this will be much more sustainable and resilient over time. And finally, the last is solutions to support carbon removal. This is also a very important thing. Projects that can, you know, motivate and incentivize the population, the enterprises, you know, to be more net zero approach. So Swiss Re, for example, has made a strong commitment to achieve net zero operations by 2030, and achieve the full net zero emissions by 2050, meaning also our asset management and our underwriting portfolios. And what this means really is really about carbon offset and carbon removal. Carbon offset meaning that we compensate all the emissions we have by paying others to reduce their emissions or avoid activities that can produce emissions. So we have been neutral since 2003, but we want to go above and beyond that. What we want to do is being net zero means that for every flight we take for a business meeting, for every electricity we are consuming in a building, for every client we are supporting, for example, we are supporting an oil and gas company, we are supporting whatever type of underwriting and protection we are providing to a client, we want to make sure that we are also removing carbon from the nature. And one way of removing carbon is really for each ton emitted, we want to remove another one from the air. And there's ways of doing that. One is planting trees, because trees capture and removes carbon from the atmosphere, and the other one is supporting enterprises. There's dedicated specialized enterprises that are actually building large machines that are capturing CO2 from the atmosphere and placing in underground storage. So this is the commitments that we are doing, and this is one of the heavy lines of business that we are focusing a lot and encouraging others to help making a much cleaner atmosphere and getting rid of CO2 emissions. Up to here, is there any questions, pressing questions from anyone? Do you see any hands, Jasper? I see someone in the chat. Oh, it's you. Okay.
No hands as far as I can see.
Okay, so let's move to the next one, please. Yeah, so how Swiss Re contributes to coastal and ocean resilience. As was mentioned before, we are working to be nature positive, net zero on CO2 emissions, both in our own operations, but also in our insurance solutions and asset management investments. So avoid meaning no harm policies, which means that we are not supporting any clients. So we have withdrawn our support for those specific corporates or clients that has a thermal coal or are heavy polluters. So we are not providing any support anymore. Reducing net zero targets. I just mentioned what is our goals of net zero targets for 2030 and 2050. Restore is clearly the example I just gave to you about the Mexico coral reef. Also about transforming. This is also about transforming concrete, cement, gray areas into more resilient green-gray infrastructure that can be much more sustainable over time. And also Swiss Re Foundation, this is something that I will discuss in the next slide. So as a global enterprise, we also have our foundation, and our foundation supports nature-based solutions with grant funding and expertise that can impact nature asset conservation, can deliver sustainable and tangible benefits for people, the involvement and leverage of the private sector finance. So what we really want to see is that the reason we are supporting this type of initiatives is that we want to see innovation in risk and resilience, and we also want to see it scaled and being commercialized. So we encourage everyone to participate. We have many other examples that can be shared if someone wants. But what we really want is to ensure the benefits of innovations are being delivered across the globe and have a maximum impact to the communities, to the economies, and to the ecosystems. So here I'll stop and open to any questions that anyone may have.
Great, thank you very much, Ruben. It is an interesting presentation you have, and some staggering numbers in the beginning. And I work in the space, and I'm still a bit taken aback. Any questions you can ask? Just raise your hand, put in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing so I get a better overview of. There we go. I think that's a good review of the presentation, Ruben. No questions.
Everyone either understood it perfectly or nobody understood anything, so they're being shy. Federico.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to break the ice a little bit. Thank you for the great presentations, Ruben and Jesper. I'm Federico Mazza, Program Manager at Aura. I've got a simple question for you, Ruben. I will be curious to know what are your expectations from the Innovation Challenge? What would you like to see coming out of it in a few months? And you know, if you can share like your best case scenario about it, I would be interested in knowing that.
So yeah, definitely what I just mentioned at the end of my presentation, we want to see projects that are focused on reducing risk mitigation, risk resilience, and helping communities to be more resilient, helping the environment being nature friendly, things that can help, you know, to make the atmosphere more clean, projects that can support to bring risk awareness to the population. I think that's one of the struggles, and to understand that the world is suffering, nature is suffering, and we need to be more friendly, because nature, as I mentioned, nature protects, and we need to protect them, and we need to be more friendly. And we need to continue, of course. We're not saying about laying off on tourism activities, not laying off on development growth, but we need to make it much more sustainable. And all type of projects that are focused on making compatible growth development with being friendly to the ecosystem, to the nature, and to the atmosphere. Those are the type of projects that are extremely welcome.
Thank you, both. David, please.
Ruben. Yeah, thanks also from my side for the presentation. I have a question, and I'm just really interested in your own view. You clearly showed how, let's call them revenue streams. I mean, coral reefs protect against risk, and they also generate quite a number of different revenue streams. And at least in my personal point of view, something like that should actually be much more significantly regulated, where there's obviously the 30 by 30 biodiversity target, but yeah, I would simply say that we need to have very clear either restoration and conservation targets that are at a very specific level, because of all these the value that they deliver. And I guess I only wanted to ask you, what do you think is the possibility that that companies might actually have to start getting significantly involved in coral reef conservation and restoration efforts beyond voluntary participation in projects? Do you see that as something that might feasibly become mandated in the next, I don't know, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, this is a very good question, David. What I can say is that after this coral reef project was developed in Mexico, we saw a lot of interest from many organizations, international organizations, NGOs, but also governments across the globe. There are similar efforts taking place in Australia for the Great Barrier Reef, for example, in a lot of parts of Asia, in Dominican Republic, in other islands of the Caribbean. They are all in the San Andres and Providencian Islands of Colombia that are close to Central America. By the way, they were devastated last year by a hurricane, and the reef played a role there, but also significantly impacted. So I would say there is raise awareness around this topic, but I think it's taking too long for all the stakeholders involved to take actions and next steps, because this is a public-private partnership. There is no way a single party can work on it by itself, and there's need a lot of decisions around who owns the nature and who should be doing something about it to conserve, to protect the environment. So there is definitely a role that the government needs to take, either by issuing the adequate public policies around it, but also if the government coordinating all the efforts to make sure that, as I mentioned, if there's overexploitation of natural environment or the coral reef, for example, if there's overpollution of the oceans and this is killing the reef, there needs to be regulation around it. There needs to be guidelines. There needs to be, public policies to ensure that this is not happening or is being controlled. So you need a comprehensive strategy approach, which is permanent conservation and restoration of the coral reef. Make sure that you have adequate funds, and this could be funds not only coming from the government, not only from the private sector, but a combination of both. In this case, the Mexico case is very interesting because what they decided to do is take a portion of a tourism tax that is collected by the municipalities. A portion of that tax is being transferred to a trust fund that was created by the government together with the Hotels Association. And they use that money for these three main activities: permanent conservation and restoration of the coral reef, paying for those, what we call in insurance, more frequent, less severe hurricane events, those events that is too costly to transfer to the international insurance market. So you retain those risks, and you use your own funds to restore the reef because the damages are not so big. And then you buy insurance for those more severe but less frequent events, talking about hurricanes category 4, 5, or even a high 3 event, which are the ones that is going to need immediate amount of resources to pay for the communities, the local community brigades that are trained to go out to the field and do all the activities that are necessary in a very fast manner. So this is a clear example of, but you need, in summary, you need everyone to be, involved and taking actions together.
Thank you. Good question and good response. Karen, please.
Thanks so much, Jesper. And hello, everyone. I'm Karen Sack. I'm the Executive Director of the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance. And first and foremost, want to thank Swiss Re and the Swiss Re Foundation, Ruben and Elodie. It's wonderful to see you on this call, for your support for the second Ocean Resilience Innovation Challenge, and of course also the UK government's Blue Planet Fund for their support for us as we do this. And I think, just in response, both David, to what you were saying, and Ruben, the whole ethos and rationale for the development of Aura is really to put together governments, the private sector, and civil society from around the world, so that we can sit at the same table and begin to solve for some of these issues. We can engage in the policy realm, government policy, but also private sector policy making. We can work with organizations that are working on the ground and internationally, and we can drive action forward. And that's why we're so excited about this challenge, because it really is the opportunity to source from the ground up locally led projects that can help develop the type of products, insurance or finance products, that Ruben was talking about. We know, for example, that in the Caribbean, the Mesoamerican Reef, some of the ideas that have filtered into the parametric insurance product and shaped it so that it can become a model that can be grown out from some of the partnerships that we now have with the Mesoamerican Reef Fund and others, has been led by the local voices speaking to the need to employ workers after an extreme storm event, working with scientists on the ground to understand the need of cleaning up the reefs immediately post an extreme event, but also making sure that it's maintained in advance so that it is as healthy and resilient as possible. And so this is where the exciting work is. And I think just to say that what we've seen, and certainly coming out of COP26, is a real catalyzation of interest into the sector, into nature-based solutions and financial products that can drive action forward. So we're really excited to get the applications in for the Resilience Challenge, to evaluate them and to start working to move all of these forward. So thank you, Jesper, for your leadership on all of this. And we're looking forward to seeing as many applications as we can, to evaluating them, and to getting on with what we internally call ORIC 2.0, so that we can drive it forward.
Thank you, Karen. No, I have the best job on the planet, I think. I get to work with really smart people to try to solve problems like this. It's both, it helps me cope, but it's also drives me forward because it's so exciting what's happening. You're always free to contact me on the email I shared, or the innovation@oceanriskalliance.org email, which is in the guidance notes and on the website. Now or anytime leading up to the deadline, as well as after the deadline, but I won't be able to help you as much then. Or if you have any burning questions now. Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. Well, with that, I don't know what time zones you're in, but here it's closing in on 5, and it's already night dark. So, like I'm obviously in the wrong place, but I'll make do for now. Again, repetition is good. So if you have any questions, do reach out. Don't hesitate. and I look forward to reading a lot of exciting applications over, not so much, but a little bit, and over Christmas and then after Christmas. Well,
excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And I wish you a good rest of the day.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Jesper.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.